Hello everyone. So welcome to Jordan B Peterson community discussions. This week we'll be discussing Maps of Meaning Lecture 7 as well as a Biblical Series Lecture 7. So I'll let Nitha start the discussion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So yesterday we talked about selfishness, and I don't really remember how what point that was about originally, but it was something we talked about. Um, and people are selfish, of course, but it's not really selfish individuals because ultimately it's your genes that are selfish. So the genes want to survive to the next generation, and that is why you care about your children, because your children carry your genes. So, and I think that you can also care about society that way, because like the society that your children will live in. So you should care about society in the future, even when you're dead. So, but uh, I think that it seems like people care about themselves, their present selves, specifically now. So I thought about why that is. Like, why do people not seem to care about the future anymore? Um, and it's like, I don't know. I don't really know how to motivate that. It's one part is that it seems like politicians, they care about what happens for the next 4 years when they will be in power, and uh, um, and it just seems like people, yeah, don't care about the future that much. Um, so yeah, so why don't they do that anymore? Um, and I thought of some ideas why. And one idea is that people might not feel hopeful about the future. So it seems like before, people always thought that things would get better all the time, but now it seems like people think that things will get worse. We are afraid of wars, and then that everything will collapse. Um, and I think I've seen studies of that as well. So uh, maybe people react that way because they're not hopeful about the future. So they think that everything will be bad anyway. Um, or they might not think that they have an impact, uh, but that doesn't seem to be a good explanation. Um, or it might just simply be like they avoid responsibility. So what do you think?
To me, the main issue is people would again take the easiest path that they can take. For example, if I have to choose between enjoying myself today as opposed to working on some long-term goal, really, which really requires that I exert myself,
Mm,
then it should not be a surprise that I would choose to indulge myself rather than delay gratification. So that's not a surprise to me. In my experience, what ends up happening is at some point it becomes really painful for you to keep on indulging yourself because you are not really getting anywhere. Yes, you are enjoying life and everything, but at some point you stop and you say, "Oh, wait a minute, stop! Like, where am I going?" Uh, and
mm,
uh, At some point, the pleasures that you are enjoying, they no longer work for you. So you start looking for more deeper pleasures. It's when that process kind of doesn't work for you, that's when you start looking at the other picture. Or sometimes what happens is um, some event will happen that will really shake you. Sometimes it will shake you to your core, and that can result in the person looking for a more deeper version of themselves. And the other reason would be people who don't have meaning. So I think you need to have meaning. Um, you need to have that experience where you can see that future, and you find that meaningful in order for you to overcome uh, the resistance that you need to overcome in order for you to and I think part of it is people do try, a lot of people do try, but maybe
Mm.
they try for a day or two, but on the third day, who wants to wake up like early at 4 or 5 and start or who wants to hit the gym like on every alternate days. So that just too much for them. They just cannot persist. It's a really hard problem to solve, to continually motivate yourself uh,
Mm.
in order to do that. And I think a lot of people, I think more people fall into this category where they do try once in a while, like, but they keep failing and then they just give up. Uh,
Mm. So it's like the same problem with motivating yourself for long-term goals versus short-term goals, but instead of long-term and short-term goals, it's uh, yourself now and society in the future.
well, you don't need any kind of. It's a difficult thing to say. I would say you the motivation to indulge in the short term goals is the default, I think.
Yeah.
So
So
uh,
it's like your motivation for yourself is it's like uh, the same. It's easier to care about yourself than to care about society, even if that is the most um, reasonable thing to do.
but at what point does the society come into the picture? Because uh,
Because
uh,
you will die.
so that's okay. I will die, so that's okay. I mean, uh, I will die someday, so uh, that has nothing to do. I don't see how that has anything to do with the society.
Yeah, because you will die, but some part of you will continue to exist. Genes that you carry are also carried by other people. So if you get children, that's one way, but it's also like every other human being share genes with you. So like you live on in some form after you're dead, but it's not you. It's your genes in other people.
I'm not saying the selfish gene theory is like incorrect or anything. I just I'm not qualified to even fully understand it. So, but as a person, I actually don't say that. Like I don't think about the genes or anything like that. Like I have this consciousness and my own cognition. Um, uh, so. Uh, if like genes are doing that, they must be doing it in like influencing me in indirect ways. uh,
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Well, they do. Like one thing is like parents care about their children. So that's one very uh, easy way. Like parents can die for their children, like die so that their children can survive. So that's one part where you can see that these motivations are really strong. But it seems like it's cultural as well, because now I think it's the culture that's changed. And I don't know how it is in India, but if it's different, I don't know. Have you thought about this? does it seem to you like people care more about themselves than people did before, like last generation and the generation before that, and so on?
To me, things have really not. Um, the issue with me is I'm really not connected to the older generation. To me, I just cannot connect with them. Like their way of looking at things, I just um, find it difficult to even have conversation with them. And the only ones that I can have are the ones who are like highly educated, have been like working on the private sector for a long time, are kind of exposed to the you know things that are going around the globe, people who have been to the west, people who travel. So uh, but in general I do in the current generation I do see a great deal of um, attitude to fix the things that were wrong with the previous generation, a lot of inclination to improve the state of the country.
Mm.
uh,
Mm.
but at the same time I also see this attitude that um uh, you are on your own, like we have so many people in this country. So uh, this is the one of the things that I have a problem with, that people seem to uh, for example, even when the government installs a dustbin, you would still find the wrappers lying around, so they cannot like walk 10 steps and put it where they should put it. So there is this casual attitude about uh, and not fully understanding the impact you are having on the environment around you. Just they're just in me mode, like always,
Mm.
not able
Mm.
to kind of understand uh, that there is a larger picture here that you are supposed to look at. And yeah, so yes, I don't like it, but I'm not since I don't really I'm a kind of a prisoner of my own bubble. So there are very limited set of people with whom I can really have a conversation and connect with. So I feel like I'm
Mm.
disconnected to I'm telling you what I see, but I wouldn't like I don't even understand the previous generation, what they are all about. uh,
Mm.
uh, to
Okay.
me
Mm.
their default mode seem to be get a job, then get married, then have kids, then live next 25 years of your life working so that you can feed your kids and make them into adults, support them and
Mm.
everything. So that to me seems like and that to me doesn't make sense, and it doesn't make sense to a lot of other young people I know, because I'm not saying they will not get married at some point, but they want to explore their own things, they have their own dreams, they have their own interests, and there's this constant tension um going on. But then there are people in the current generation who think exactly like the previous generation. They are on this default path. Uh, so that so that's and to a certain degree, I do see this struggle. People that I know who are pursuing meaning, uh,
Mm.
they're not necessarily uh, they're in the group which gets married later, not earlier. So
Mm.
we are seeing that. So, and it's the same thing in Europe, where people have stopped having kids. Uh, there is
Mm.
something about
Yeah, I'm thinking about that. Like, uh, I don't know, but it could be a sign of this phenomenon that that we're discussing. People don't get kids because they well, they care about themselves, but that might not be the only thing. But it's also like something you see a lot, that people say, oh, why would I want a kid? They just scream and something like that.
Yeah, it's a big
It would be
sacrifice.
so hard, so I don't want to have a kid. Like, instead of it just like it's the thing that will exist when you die. It's like, how could you not want that? How could you? Well, I know that some people don't. Yeah, okay, whatever.
Okay, so I'll start with my lecture notes.
Yeah, okay.
Because this discussion, I believe, will extend uh, like forever. The one about kids. Uh,
Yeah, but
okay.
okay. Can I
Yeah.
just say something else about this?
Yep.
Because when uh, I recognize this discussion from when we discussed Brave New World. So were you here for that discussion?
No, I believe I was not.
Okay. Because then it was like this. Some of us thought that, like, of course, you wouldn't. Have you read the book, by the way, Brave New World?
No, I have not.
Okay. So it's like, the idea is you're happy all the time, and because you're on drugs, and and society is made in such a way that there's basically no conflicts and everything's fine, and you're made to like the things that you do. So you're like kind of bred to be like oh, hi.
Hey Nick, welcome.
Hey, Sebastian. I think.
Hi.
Hi. Have you read the Brave New World?
No, but I know the basic
Okay.
content.
Okay. So yeah, so it's like, would you like to live that life? You get to be happy all the time. Um but you um but you won't be able to make any like individual decisions. It's like everything is um yeah, and you're happy all the time, but you can't make things better. It's just like you live in this society which makes you happy, but you can't improve it and you can't change it. So and some of us in that discussion when we discussed this book thought that this is like not a good society. This is like something we want to avoid, like, because it's like these people are not even human anymore, because they don't have human problems and they don't act like humans do. They are just some creatures with human DNA who are on drugs all the time and are really happy, and um, so it seems so meaningless. And then some thought that, oh, this is actually like a good society. Well, what is wrong with this? So
Well, I can see the point. Like, if you're happy all the time, you don't care about the problems that we project on that. You know, like just because we think it's bad, as soon as you're happy, you don't think it's bad anymore. So all your problems go away.
but if you had the choice, would you decide to live in that society?
I don't know, maybe. Like, I haven't thought of that, but I would guess it's the same as like dying. As soon as you're dead, you don't care about being dead. You know what I mean? Like, being dead is only bad for the people around you, because you yourself can't, like, you can't be like, oh fuck, I'm dead.
Mm.
So basically, as soon as you're in there, it doesn't matter anymore what the others think. So
Mm.
I would probably go for it. Like, eternal bliss doesn't sound so bad to me.
What about Sumit?
To me, happiness is such a waste of time, and I realized it when I was listening to Peterson a while back, and he does bring up this point where he said, "Okay, don't chase happiness, chase meaning." So to me, that made all the sense because when there is this cultural thing, not cultural, I think it's a because I've seen this in the West, I've seen it in my own country, so I can't say it's. I'm not sure if it is cultural or what, uh, but there is this expectations that people have from you that you are always supposed to be happy, smiling, and good, and all that. And it does put a lot of pressure on you to kind of at least seem happy all the time. And if you are not happy, you feel guilty. And uh, I have done that for a very long time, and then I realized that there are. I was recently reading a book on psychology, and I ran into this term called low positive affectivity. So some people just don't experience these positive emotions in a way that these party people do. So people who don't have that, they are like kind of uh, removed from the group which can be happy and party because I have seen people even at my workplace enjoy party whenever they organize the events, and everyone is having like the greatest time of their life, and they are making so much noise, and when they come back they are like seem so happy. But if I go there, like I just become so depressed. It doesn't make any sense to me what they are doing. So to me, uh, chasing my dreams that I have decided and pursuing my goals, uh, uh, that's what makes me not happy but fulfilled, because happiness is different. This is a different kind of maybe a different kind of happiness or something else altogether. And when I pursue those goals, it is really at times painful because let's just say if I want to run a marathon and the training is just really hard, and it is full of pain, and but it is also putting you in this upward trajectory where you are getting more and more closer to your goal, and that does put you into this really meaningful state. So Peterson also
Mm.
discusses that in this lecture. So I'm not that worried about happiness really. uh,
Mm.
I believe I
Yeah,
care more
because
about
that's
meaning. Yeah.
yeah, that is the same for me. Like I care more about meaning, I guess. Um, yeah, meaning because like if uh, like uh, uh, like if you die, of course, when you're dead, you won't be able to feel anything. So like, but I don't want to die. Like even though it like wouldn't be painful or anything, like I want to do things and I want to improve things and I want to do something meaningful for the world, um, like as much as I can. And that's like happiness doesn't seem to be enough. It's just like to live a meaningless but happy life doesn't seem too much. It doesn't seem enough to me. And I think that this is like the difference here, that um, like, and the reason that people might be more selfish now, um, because they don't think they value happiness. Maybe that's it. Like the people value happiness more than meaning. So they are selfish because happiness is about what you feel yourself.
The reason the reason I was saying happiness is such a waste of time is you're always like chasing it. Like once you get your high, uh, let's just
Mm.
say I'm watching videos on YouTube, and one is like really great. I'm so happy after watching it. Then I go, then my happiness level kind of comes back to normal levels. Then I look for the next high. I'll go out in the restaurant and I'll enjoy the food. Then that's the one high. Then next time I will look for the same high again. Uh, or if you get happiness by talking to your friends, so you are constantly looking to the friends for that happiness. You're always kind of chasing it, and you get your high, then it comes down. Then next day it starts all over again. Uh,
Mm.
and
Yeah, for
uh,
mm.
yeah,
Yeah,
at some point you
for
gotta say, yeah.
sorry.
At some point you gotta say, like, like, this is enough. I'm not, I'm not part of this anymore. Like, I don't want to participate in this anymore. I want to chase some other, see if there is a separate way to live like this. Same thing happened for negative emotions. uh, like
Mm.
negative event happens, I get really bothered and depressed by it, and then a couple of days later I look back and I say, I'm glad that happened, because of that I did this or did that. And one day I was like, you know what, stop, enough. Like, it feels like some kind of drama after a certain point. And that's what I learned during meditation, that um, the drama of the mind, where positive event happens, you feel good, the negative event happens, you go down, and you are kind of fused with that experience. So
Mm.
you are going up and down with the waves all the time. When you are up, you are like cool. When you're going down, you are freaking out. And it's about there is a Sam Harris episode on it, uh, where he discusses this with Daniel Goleman and this other person called Richie. So it's about kind of diffusing yourself from that uh, um, ups and downs that keep on coming, like kind of making yourself a little bit separate. Uh, how that comes, how that connects with having meaning, I'm not fully able to understand. But one thing I have realized is happiness is like waste of my time. So I'm not going to uh, try to go out of my way to say I want to be happy, I want to be happy, I want to be happy. No, I want
Mm.
to achieve something. I want to achieve these goals.
Mm.
uh,
Yeah, I
That's the
view.
same. That's exactly the same that a psychiatrist once said to me when I was visiting him for we thought of depression, but it was something else that just bothered me, and I spoke to him, and he said, like, what's your goal in life, basically. And naive back then, and I just said, like, I just want to be happy. And he laughed at me, or he smiled at me and said, like, are you sure about that? Like, and I thought about it, and we talked about it, and like, turns out there are better things to aim for, and if you aim for it, happiness is something that you'll gather on the way, I guess. It's like a side product.
It's like a sign that something that you're doing something right or wrong. Like I think emotions in general,
Hmm.
like they show you if you should continue a behavior or stop a behavior.
Hmm. Like, your
So
goal
that's
should,
like.
like,
Mm.
when with the example of your friends, that, like, when you hang around with them, you're happy. The goal should be to establish a good relationship, and the side product is that you're happy when you meet them. The goal shouldn't
Mm.
be to be happy when you meet them, because you won't be every time. Like, you might fight sometimes, or like disagree, or just like be sad on that day. So if happiness was the only goal, the friendship would just fail straight up.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, and it's kind of difficult because then if your goal is happiness, then you can cheat to get happiness. So like you can take
Yeah, man,
drugs
you're
or
into drugs so fast.
mm, mm. And you would also like you would take these easy solutions um, like we discussed when we discussed Brave New World, like if you get to be in a room like and just get drugs which make you extremely happy for the rest of your life, and regardless of what happens outside, like you will just be in that room and be just really happy until you die, like and if you do that, like what happens to everyone, you know, like your family and everything, you just abandon them really. It's like you're dying, like but if you decide to make that decision, then it's like you only care about yourself, you as an individual, and
Yeah,
that
you give
doesn't
up all
really
your
help you in the long run.
responsibility. You give up all your
Yeah,
responsibility,
yeah,
basically.
yeah.
Yeah, I doubt if this would work. I totally agree with that. Like, that person will not be able to function in the world anymore. He
Yeah, that person won't be in the world anymore. He will just be in that room.
She or he is then in this constant state of ecstasy. But the thing is,
Mm.
you asked me if I wanted to live in a society like that, where if
Yeah,
everybody's
yeah. That's two
like
different
that,
things. Yeah.
like nobody would care about me giving up my responsibility. There would nobody be left to judge me. So I guess it would be quite a good trade.
What if it's like if you would you decide if it was your decision to make the entire
Oh
world
yeah,
into such as a society? What about that question?
man, I would probably be overwhelmed by the responsibility to make that decision. It's like the trolley problem where most people would just get paralyzed probably and not do anything. Um, yeah, I don't know. The thing is, uh, like I'm in a quite privileged position here in this country and this timeline, you know, and like I could and instantly change this situation to be eternal bliss, but there are like places on Earth that are just like hell, I would assume, and that are not nice to live in,
actually they are
or
shitholes.
times. And I mean, I just remember this story that John Peterson told of the author that traveled to West England and saw this woman from his train. He saw this woman draining a pipe at like what 20 degrees negative 20 degrees Celsius or something. And like he thought about how worth living that life is. And when I look or when I think of all the lives that are like miserable from start to end, I would probably just go with it.
Mm. Hi.
Hey,
Hey, welcome back, dude.
hey. You're not getting my video because I'm happily in bed in Phuket in Thailand.
Good, good.
But I was listening to the discussion for the last 30 minutes and thought I'd add a few 2 cents.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
good.
So, but you need to catch me up because the last bit that I heard was because there'll be a delay from the stream. And hello,
Mm.
Sebastian. I haven't met you yet. So I'm Ben. If you to
Yeah, we have met
introduce.
already. I was once on a stream back when it was not streamed on YouTube yet. I was on a conversation once in the
Right. Okay.
past.
Yeah, it would have been like 6 months ago or like 4
Well,
months ago.
you had longer hair and a beard, I think, that time.
Yeah, I got the beard, but right now I got no hair. So,
Okay.
so uh Yeah, so I was up to the bit where you were talking about so shedding responsibility, but I think because I haven't watched the lectures, I haven't kept up with the lectures since I've taken my little leave. But for the responsibility thing, there was actually a circumstance over here. I'm in Phuket with a friend, and actually, I won't reveal the exact details as I don't want to incriminate this person, but perhaps I already have. But yeah, so I've noticed when I've been in Phuket, I've met several people, and it's a fairly interesting town. Like, there's a lot of Europeans here, a lot of obnoxious Europeans. And there seems to be like, I was in Patong yesterday, which is like the party area of Phuket, and there's a thing called like the ping pong show where like girls shoot ping pongs out of their bits and pieces, and apparently that's a tourist attraction that people go to here. And then there's like strip clubs all through and things like that. But what I found is it seems like certain people, like when we talk about responsibility, I've really come to kind of think that people in general are allergic to responsibility. And maybe how allergic you are is probably your conscientious score. And because what I've noticed is, at least the experience that I had recently was someone wanted me to go to the ping pong show, and then I was like, hell no, I'm not going to that. It's against everything that I want to accomplish in my life. You know, I want a resume that actually pulls me forward towards the goals and the things I wish to achieve, and that just drags me away from the things I wish to achieve. And then he was like, okay, well, what about a strip club? And I was like, no, same thing. And then he's like, well, what about a go-go club? And I was like, I have no idea what that is, but if you're going to buy me a beer, then fine. But then it turns out the go-go clubs is just another word for a strip club. But so I was very unpleased about this. And then afterwards, I went and bought a whole bunch of sanitization products and sprayed myself and doused myself. And I was horrified. But what I realized is, at least for this person, they didn't want me to, they didn't want to go in by themselves. And yet they still viewed the action, like that type of environment, as immoral. But they didn't want to do it by themselves. And I think it's like the same things where if you see somebody cheating or you see someone shedding responsibility, like for instance, that experiment where if you have to press the button to electrocute someone, you probably won't do it. But then if you see someone press the buttons and electrocute someone, then when you're asked, you're more likely to do it. And I think it's part of that, which is if you are afraid of responsibility or terrified of it, then, or if you've structured a life around building up habits that absolve you from responsibility, then accepting responsibility or taking responsibility or achieving it becomes something you are allergic or resistant to. And then if you are tempted to then do things that perpetuate that irresponsibility, you want to be able to do it with other people because then it provides the social proof and the social acceptance. And with one of the particular friends in this situation, like they kind of look up to me as like the father figure, like the firm father figure, which they're terrified of and they want to make proud and things like that. And in which case, I think it's very much about, well, if this action that this person is about to do is unacceptable to the father figure, then it's a really bad cast against the nihilism or the postmodernism. And in which case it's terrifying because then it's like a firm emotion to say they're doing the wrong thing. But if they can convince the father figure to let go of the father figure's own authority of righteousness, then they bring them down into this absurdity of existence where everything is permissible because progressivism is progress. And to me, that seems it's like a one-way road to disaster, I think. And when we're tying that into like the 1984 situation, I was one of the people in that discussion thinking, man, that would be the best thing in the world.
You meant
And
Brave New World, right?
yeah, Brave New World. What did I,
Yeah.
did I say Better New World?
You
Yeah,
say
so
you said 1984.
okay, sorry, yeah, Brave New World. Um,
Mm.
thank you. And it's very similar to the Cypher situation in the Matrix, right? Like Cypher kills all his buddies, so gives them over to the evil father figure, which is like the Matrix, in order for him to get his happiness, his everlasting happiness in this illusion. And the thing is the Matrix, like he ends up dying and falling to that. And I think that that's also tends to be true because the people who are just after avoiding responsibility are going to get punished by the universe because the universe doesn't reward the irresponsible because responsibility is all about aligning yourself with, you know, the God, the rule maker's rules, so that way you get the bounty. So and that's like the thing with the Matrix, like with Neo, how he gets his power in the Matrix, which is he aligns himself with the rules of the system, rather than just being passively submissive to it. Instead, he aligns so completely, he's now able to mold the rules and also become a rule maker in that system. Um, and yeah, but I think with progressiveness in general and with the media, and I've noticed this with YouTube. Like I haven't checked YouTube since I started checking it 2 days ago. So it went like 2 weeks without watching any YouTube. And I come back and then suddenly it's like, man, there's so much fucking drama that everyone keeps talking about. And it seems like it's just like the media or like high school groups. Like it's the same type of high school groups seem to form in any community or any scene. So you have like some people which are just addicted to whispering the stories and keeping each other updated. Some create drama, some don't care about the drama. Some live such boring lives that their only thing is to create drama about the people living interesting lives. Um, and I think, and then you have the irresponsible frat boys, for instance, like right now it's the Logan Paul person. Um, and, but to me, it's like there's a lot of stuff in there which is about a community of people just being followers to the trends of the community rather than people taking account of their own life and then doing what is right for them. And that could be someone who, you know, doesn't do anything that is that radical from society's view because not everyone is meant to be radical. But it seems like it's very easy for people to just pass the baton to other people to make decisions, but then to try and tear down those people as much as possible so everything is permissible. So that's my little rant.
Ben, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I have seen this tendency, like, let's just say, I know a bunch of friends who get together at night. They, drink and they have fun. They talk about all the things that makes like no sense to me. They'll pick up any topic, and start making fun or talk about what that guy is doing, what his girlfriend is doing, and what happened there, here, or that kind of thing. So I have seen that if you encounter this group, like I encounter them and I say hi, how are you guys doing, and then I want to go about doing my business. But there seems to be a great. I have never met a group like this, which doesn't want the newcomer to be just like them, like sit here, have drinks with us, and they will like try to force you into that. Like they will say, okay, why don't you want to drink? So they try to put this pressure on you, and they want you to become part of their clan. But on the other hand, if let's just say me, Netha, and Sebastian and you are sitting somewhere and we are just reading books, or you are doing some things, and some other guy comes along and says hi, hello, and we talk about what we are doing, then we wouldn't like want him to be part of our group by kind of putting certain kind of psychological pressure on him. Like it's up to him. If he want, if what we are doing makes sense to him, he can come and join our group. and participate in the discussion, otherwise not. But these party types, they're always, if you're not like them, they're always like, at least that's been my experience, they're always like pulling you into their direction. It's like they just cannot they seem to be allergic to one person who doesn't need all that. He can just sit in one corner and do his own thing, and he's just entertained by that. He doesn't need that. So there seems to be that they seem to be like offended by your very existence, like when you declare that, okay, so I'm going and doing my thing. So I don't know why that is.
Yeah, I found I I found the same thing, and I think there was actually a few points that I wanted to say, but I already forgot them. Um, uh, duh, duh, duh.
I guess the
Yeah,
spirit I'm trying to convey here, Ben, is that uh, I have seen these like archetypes, people who are going after something, like going after meaning, like me and Natha were discussing earlier before you guys came. And if we had to force someone to join our group, like we would be offended by that, like to put pressure on
yeah.
some other individual to
All
be
right.
part.
I remember the point. So I think it's about civility, and I think Milo was talking about this last year, and he made a big call for that as well as Peterson, when the Peterson stuff broke out at the beginning of the year, which was the freedom of speech discussion, which is if you can be civil, then you can use speech to then communicate differences and then come to conclusions, and you can do that through the power of rationality. However, if you don't have freedom of speech or you don't have rationality, then you can't use speech to then convince people of things. Instead, there's then techniques like shame or emotions and these more older techniques to then try and get people to submit or to uh, I think submit is a good word, but agree is also a way. So you try and do some more tribalistic ways of getting people to join your group. And I think maybe you found the same thing, but for me, when I experienced those types of people that you're referring to, Submit, I found that they generally use shame a lot in their techniques of trying to get you to submit to their standards. So they'll say like, "Oh, relax," or "You're being so rational," or "Stop thinking so much." And it's funny because I don't think that much at all. I found, and I think the reason why is I used to think a lot when I was a teenager, and then when I was like 18 or so, I decided, screw it, I'm just going to act, and then uh, act so much that I'm going to react in post rather than in prep, because that way I can act, I can build experience and build resilience against the world, and then in hindsight, then fix the little things that need correction. So then over the last 10 years, I've built up strong habits where now I don't really think that much because there's not that many things that need correction. Or if I do think about something, it's like in the shower or, something passive every now and then. But I think if you've built up 20 or 30 or so years of, always questioning yourself and never actually acting, then you don't have a resilience or courage in yourself to actually be strong in yourself, and you don't really know what is right because you've been too much on the fence of thinking about what other people may think or being on the fence of other people's approval. And if you're always trying to get other people's approval, then you're also trying to get them to submit to you as well. And then I think that's like the role of shame in it. But if you're a more disagreeable person, then you will do what you want, and then if other people don't like it, then you assess that after the fact. And then maybe that issue is with them, or maybe the issue is with you. And then I think if you have enough openness as well, this is probably another factor in it, then you can actually assess that rationally rather than just being upset about that in that conversation. So then, if someone has some feedback, you can deal with it and then be like, okay, is this my fault? Is it their fault? Is this something that actually needs to submit? Can we operate differently? Does one person need to compromise? Because a lot of the time, like, people can actually act differently and have different thoughts about things and not actually have to need to think the same. Whereas if you're in a big social group, then I think there's more need for everybody to think the same, because that's how you get acceptance.
Yeah, but I still wonder, like, why they want, why can't they tolerate your very existence, Ben? That your different way of doing things. Why can't they just leave it at that?
So I
They
have
might.
actually, yeah, go Nato. I think you would probably give a good answer for this.
Yeah, I thought maybe they feel threatened by the fact that someone is like, yeah, is different in some way. I don't know. That's just a thought.
In Japan, my brother told me they have a saying which is, and I'm going to paraphrase the saying, but it's like the rough edge gets hammered down, or the nail that sticks out gets hammered down, or something like that. So it's like anything which is too radical will get shamed out. So if you do want to be different, then you do small little things to appear different. You don't do something like coloring your hair a different color. Instead, you'll get your teeth changed a little bit. And so I think like that's part of society enforcing a cultural standard. But then I think there's also the other bit, which is like I have a friend, she's a journalist, super agreeable, like probably 90% or so on agreeableness. And I think that's very common for journalists to be really high on agreeableness. And for her, she got into journalism primarily, it seems that, and I had this discussion with her, that's how we end up figuring this out, which is she would see conflict, and she come from a lot of conflict in her past, but she would see conflict, and then she thought if only people had the same information or thought the same, then there wouldn't be conflict anymore. So then she can go into journalism to try and get the correct information to as many people as possible. If only people thought the same or had the right information, then they would think the same. And it's also like the type of thought that is, generally left wing, which is, if we can only get everybody on board, then everything would be great. And then right wing is just like, leave any authority at the door, just let us be ourselves and be different. Which is then to be like the personality type things. But so I think there is a need. So there, to summarize, then there's people who think if everyone agrees, then there'll be less conflict, and they don't like conflict. And then there's the other one, which is if you're nihilistic, then having people to submit or is a implicit approval of your behavior, which you do not have your own approval because, and maybe you don't even have your own approval, and that's maybe why you're depressed or anxious or whatnot, or have some dissonance in your life. So you're then seeking approval not from your own compass, but then from other people's compass. And that seems to be the way more. Actually, they seem pretty equally dangerous, but that one seems to be the one that is a bit more pathological, because that's the one which gets people signing up for to, as Peterson would say, to be like the person's controlling the gas chambers or the trains and things like that, because their compass is so weak and their ability to be courageous in the face of adversity is so weak. And it's maybe not even weak, it's maybe that they actually really do think they're doing something good. But Hannah Arendt, like she said, well, they did feel bad about it, but it was just everyone else was doing it and they weren't responsible. So maybe that is, they still felt the dissonance, but then there was enough social approval, the dissonance didn't matter, or the dissonance now became the norm. When I think someone who is more radical, then they would say, fuck this dissonance, I want to do what feels right for me. And then society, some people of society look up to that. And I think that's, for Steve Jobs or even like other more radical people like Rob Reinhardt or Peterson. You have some people who look up to those things. and even to a case like Logan Paul, like his audience looks up to him incredibly. And then you have other people who, try and tear these people down as well. But I think the ability to then say that, okay, there's people of different operations in the world can get along fine and they don't need to agree and they can operate differently is then an act of rationality and civility, and not everyone is capable of that, I think.
I think there is a part of it that goes back to what you started the discussion with, where you said people are allergic to meaning. Uh, and like, to these people, like, you are the kind of creature who doesn't need drink. um, um, I remember I was once dealing with these people, and um, one of them said, "Hey, Sumit, sit down and drink." And I was like, "No, no, no, it screws up my thinking. It does weird things in my brain. So I want to be at, like, uh, sharp level. As long as I'm awake, I want to be sharp." And then he said something really interesting, which was that uh, that is exactly why we are drinking Sumit. Don't you see? So I guess what he was saying was, when he drinks, he no longer has to, like, think about things. Like, he just is sedated or something. So that's why they were drinking. So if you are the kind of person who doesn't need that drink, who doesn't need that group, who doesn't need all this, who is kind of more self-sufficient, like, someone who can just, sit there, do his own thing, like, the whole day. He just doesn't need uh, all these activities that they have built their lives around. So uh, I feel that, there is a part of them that just kind of is so allergic to that kind of personality, uh, in the same way that Cain was resentful, because it's the life that they gave up when they uh, it's the part that they abandoned.
No.
uh,
Well, to run with this, right? Like it's what Peterson says as well, but he applies it to a different context, which is he said when he was in university, he realized he was saying things that was making him weak. So then he decided to eliminate 95% of his, his current philosophical foundations, keep the 5% that made him strong, and then build upon the 5% that made him strong. And I think that in part, that is then to say that, to tie that into like the modern feminization or the motherly nurturing of adults in the modern world, then what's happening is it is now acceptable for adults to be weak because there isn't the repercussion of death. Uh, or even societal shame about it. Like now, victims can actually operate and not starve to death from their own incompetency. Instead, now they get welfare, and society like loves them through compassion, through the weakness. And so then, like there isn't a imperative to be strong besides your own will to eliminate dissonance, it seems. But then if you just accept dissonance as part of life, then you're like, oh, life is nihilistic. Nihilism is perfectly acceptable because there is no truth in the way that Peterson talks about truth. There's only truth in the way that Harris talks about truth. And whereas Peterson would then say, well, nihilism doesn't make you a happy person. It doesn't make you a fulfilled, satiated person. So it doesn't seem to be true. And we have this hardware that needs us to compete. And this was one of the resolutions from Brave New World discussion, which is, if artificial intelligence progresses so you can put on a headset or lie in like a matrix connector and then have all the fantasies you ever dream of, then humans will, at least masculine humans, would still have a terrifying uh, curiosity in the back of their head to then be like, well, what happens if someone is walking around the room right now going to pull out the plug? right? Or what's going to happen in the real world. And that's the same thing in the Matrix, of why people woke up in the Matrix, because they started thinking, this world isn't what it seems. What if people are messing with it? And then it was like a curiosity to actually fix it, and a curiosity to enter into what's real. So I think it's very easy to be weak now, because weakness isn't going to make you perish. Whereas before, weakness would really hurt you. And now you can be content and happy. Well, not so much happy, but you can actually at least be content in your own comfort of weakness. And there's no need to actually, risk things to become stronger.
I Nitha was saying something.
Yeah, okay. Now I don't really remember. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I think it's true that there's no need to know to not to avoid being weak now. But I think that even if weak people are viewed as like not as bad as before, I guess. I think that it's better for you to be strong. Like you will get more out of being strong anyway. But yeah, that, yeah.
Mm, the part of the reason I don't get into this drinking business, or this whole sit with them till like 1 a.m. at night and just gossip, Ben, is precisely because of what you are saying. Because uh, I believe it's about two things. One is I will not attain the targets I want to attain if I
I
did
have a
that.
question.
Yeah. Hmm.
Like, would you have fun if you sat down with them and drank with them? Would it be fun to you? Because, like, if it isn't fun to you, then going away from it and doing your own stuff is pretty easy. But if it was fun to you, it would be a real sacrifice to not do it and still instead go ahead and work on your goal.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So I can answer that question in two parts. So this specific situation that we are talking about, what they are doing is actually not fun to me. I It's the same thing when I had this bunch of 30, 40 people get together, party, play these games. If somebody sent out an email in the company who said you have to play this game or you are fired or something, then I am forced to play it. But when I come back from that, I'll be feeling like shit. Like that just doesn't work with who I am. The second part is there are other indulgences that are fun for me, which I might say perhaps is same as what these people are doing, and those things I have to actively fight against them and still stay on the long term trajectory. So there are things like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. Now the second question would be, if you were doing that, what I mean, like, you will do some things that are fun in your life. Like, you won't work on your goal the whole time and just have this stoic mindset of just uh basically, yeah, just working the whole day. You will like have some leisure time and like do what you want and have fun. And in that case, if you found something that you have fun and maybe even a group of people to have fun with, and you find somebody who doesn't do that, it would be natural, from my perspective at least, it would be natural to try to convince this person to also have fun with me, because like it's fun for me. Why shouldn't it be fun for you? Then and if you take it from this perspective, it is possible to understand what these people that are drinking want from you. Like, maybe they are just having fun and can't see why you aren't having fun with them, and want you to join them because they know, or they think at least to know, that you would have fun too. The problem is they don't understand that it's not fun for you. but to, I don't know, to imply a moral high ground from your side because you are you
Hey,
stand
Sebastian.
like over that
Hello.
is yeah.
Sorry, I dropped out because I'm in India and there is a power cut, like electricity is gone.
Okay,
So
where
can you
did you
please
drop out?
report? I dropped out where you were asking the second question, the
Oh,
follow-up question.
okay.
Hmm.
So okay, I think it was something like, um, if you were to have fun, or if you were to do the activity that is fun to you, even maybe with some friends together, and you would eventually do something that's fun, like you are, if you are not the person who works all the time, you will find some leisure activity to have fun with your friends possibly, and then you are doing that. Maybe it's not drinking, maybe it's, let's just say, smoking pot or something. Okay, smoking pot is a bad idea, is a bad example. um let's just say it's something else you have fun with that is not bad for you. But then you encounter somebody who doesn't do it, and it would be natural, I think, to want that person to join you just because you think it's fun and your group think it's fun, and you would want that person to have fun with you, maybe. Um, but the problem is that you don't know that the person might not enjoy it the same way you are, but you wouldn't believe it because you are having so much fun with it. So that's basically the perspective of these people that are drinking and seeing you, I don't know, sitting in the corner with your book. They can't understand that it's not as fun to you to drink. So they will maybe, I don't know, keep inviting you. But the thing is, just
It's
because it's not fun to you doesn't mean that it's, um, yeah, you don't gain a moral high ground, I would say, by neglecting the idea to drink with people, because you don't give up anything, you just don't like it. Does it make sense?
it's starting to sound in that. Well, I don't know how you pronounce it. Analogous, like an analogy,
Yeah.
but so a similar analogy for it is asking for consent in sex, right? Because that's yeah. So like initial consent with a partner, right? Like so the analogy that popped into my mind when you're talking about it is, like right now it's about establishing consent. And what is that establishment of consent is to say, this is an activity that I think you would enjoy. I have your consent for you to participate in this activity with me. And there's ways to do that, which is, you can ask a girl, like, a random girl, can I put my penis up your ass? And it's probably not going to be that consensual, and it may get you a slap, right? Um, and but then with friends and things like that, or with someone which where you have that intimacy with, then you would be able to elicit that expression or desire for consent in a more hospitable and way that has also rapport in it. And I think that's where the violation is going to occur in the same situation about asking friends to have a drink with you, right? Because if you're going to ask someone which may have an issue with this, then it needs to be done more empathetically, where you understand or request from them the reasons for it. Because if you're pressuring them into it, then it's the same situation, which is like the where there is like a type of repression or a suppression of their ability to inhibit themselves from joining. So there's like a little bit of a power play of the social pressure. And I think there's like I think social pressure is the term that is used for it. But then, if you are actually friends with them and then you think that, hey, you may actually enjoy this activity, be it skydiving or something, then, sometimes like, certain friends, they are shy or they're timid and they need a little bit of a push. But then other friends, it may be quite bad. But for the moral high ground thing, I completely agree, which is different activities are suitable for different people, and not everybody, like if you, yeah, like alcohol or whatever it is. I'm quite libertarian on the drug issue, to the extent where I don't think welfare should pay for people's mistakes at their own accord. Um, but I think, yeah, like alcohol is something that, it's fine, but don't pressure other people into it. Like, so.
Yeah, but I don't see as to how much they really pressured him or just asked him. I guess it's dependent on the situation. But imagine, as I said, imagine you are doing something fun and see a friend coming by or something, and just want him to join you. Like it's not really if you don't want to force him. You just would like him to experience that for his sake because he might experience fun with you. But there's a there's a failure of communication that in this case Sumit does not enjoy drinking, and they apparently don't know. At least that's how I understood it.
Mm.
Well, the
I don't know,
issue happens
Sumit.
uh, when you continually keep on chasing that person until he's in that environment, until he moves away. You are continuously trying to convince him to join your great group, which is not something I would do. I wouldn't even say it is something that is even civil. Like usually, if people are interested, when you are really interested, when you ask them, "Hey, would you like to do something like this?" Then they will say yes, and then they will join. If not, that's okay. um, but I don't have to make you sit there and then kind of psychoanalyze you. Why do you feel this way? Why are you not drinking? Then I'll give some answer, and then you will tell me how I should be drinking and enjoying, how I should not be taking life too seriously or something like that. And if I say no, 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 I got this or that to do, then they will say something else, and then they will say, oh, no, 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 we are not pressuring you. But at the same time, they will take out the beer and open it and put it in front of you. So that to me is just like uh, uh, they're taking it to a different level.
Mm-hmm.
As far as having fun is concerned, you are assuming, let's just say, when uh, I, for example, spend next 3 hours listening to a psychology lecture or reading the book Peterson recommended, you are assuming I'm not having like that can be fun. Like it's not the kind of fun I have with other activities. Um it's a kind of constant revelation of the truth, and it is really fulfilling in many ways. But uh, this is something I realized about myself recently when this guy Peterson was talking about consciousness. Sebastian, that this whole fun thing in the sense that sit down somewhere and be at leisure. I don't do that unless I feel that my psychology needs to recharge or it needs a break so that I can come back. But it's not an end in itself. It's in the service of what I'm doing. I guess what I'm saying is I'm always working, Sebastian. Uh, I'm either sleeping or working or making mistakes with certain addiction I have. Those are the three things I'm doing, and the activities that I need to do in order to sustain the material things that are there, the things that I just cannot avoid. So uh, I don't know. Like it doesn't make sense to me to go on a vacation. I would still be reading and working on things when I'm on vacation. It's just that I like vacation because on vacation I can work on things that I choose rather than my employer telling me that, hey, you have to work on these three things this month. So, uh,
I to add on to this, like through some of the discussions I've had here in Phuket, this is a holiday place for a lot of Europeans, and through these discussions, then a lot of the time, uh, people would. So one of the things that I've learned is, or at least has been communicated to me, is people who are working the 9 to 5 grind, taking a vacation is very good for them because they build up steam doing something that, they may not particularly enjoy that much. Maybe they do, but so then they build up all the steam and then they come over here and then they let off the steam. And that's a perfectly adequate way of them dealing with that. Well, dealing without the negative undertones of it, like it's completely acceptable. But however, if you are someone who works in terms of the idea of you're working on yourself and that's part of your everyday, then there's less need to let off steam because every day you're not accumulating that steam. And I think that, uh, yeah. So for the drinking bit, it seems, or so that was the relation to vacationing, but then it also kind of applies to drinking, which is like co-workers often, if they don't view their job as necessarily something of like a grander purpose or whatever, then it's something which they're doing out of sacrifice, and therefore, then they earn a reward afterwards. And then it could be drinking or it could be partying in some way to let off some steam or to claim a reward. But then if the work is your reward, then, the evening can be your reward as well. And you can do something to further your progress in your life. Not that the other people aren't, there's just a different way of dealing with it. The progress is then subjective to the individual. So, um, yeah, yeah.
So basically, in when they have this habit of getting the reward of drinking after work, for example, they see so much, and he doesn't need that reward. As you said, his work is basically his reward already. That's basically an anomaly because usually people aren't able to like work all day. You understand what I'm saying? Like, that's not a normal mode. And when you encounter something that's not normal to you and that you don't understand, it is, I think, natural to explore it and maybe even poke it and try to change it. I don't feel like we should interpret too much into these people that want you to drink with them, because I would argue that it's a perfectly normal reaction to encountering someone that works all day.
It's not a no. I'm not saying I always find meaning in my work at the job, because mostly they tell you what to do. So I just wanted to clarify that. At times I find it meaningful, and since I ran into Peterson, I wish I could study this stuff full time. So that's like the ultimate meaning. Uh, Now, as far as this thing is concerned, uh, it's not normal to me, Sebastian, uh, that uh, this thing that you have to poke it and uh, try to change it. To me, uh, I wouldn't do that, and I don't do that. Uh, but you might say it is normal to humans in general. So I wouldn't know. Uh, but I do feel there is a certain uh, um,
Don't understand me wrong. Like, making somebody drink just for the sake of drinking with you and making him homogenous into, like, integrating him into the group is not like, you cannot. It's not defendable. It's like bad. I'm lacking the vocabulary right now, but
you are yeah.
I think it's still understandable.
Now that you are saying it like this, uh, I do think if I look at it from that perspective, I would say that it is understandable if I use that framing. But I cannot prove it to you uh, right now. I do feel there is a certain degree of not in all of them, but in some of them, there is a certain uh, malevolence going on. I just feel that that is happening. Uh, but obviously, I cannot prove that. I guess what I'm saying is they when they are trying to do that to you, at least like some of them, they are not your friends. Uh, when they are asking you to do that, uh, uh, they get a certain degree of satisfaction by uh, making you do this. Okay, I think I said malevolence because obviously malevolence can have multiple factors. And the one that I was feeling was that how do I say this? Like you are not someone who would do these kind of activities usually, but if they could make you, they feel a certain degree of that they have conquered something.
Yeah, I think this that part it ties into the bit about the strength and the weakness, which is I think if people are drinking and they're having fun and then they ask you out of compassion, that's very different than the people who are drinking out of vice. They're drinking to think a little bit less, to escape their worries, to escape their woes. They're drinking to make themselves weaker. Whereas people who are drinking socially to make themselves stronger within their unit, so their little tribe, and then have some fun, drink some beers while they're playing some video games or whatever it is, or drink some beers when they're having a dinner, or if drinking some beers and going out a bar and then talking to some girls in a more appropriate way, then those things are generally compassionate and what do you call it, amicable situations. Whereas then there are the ones which are doing it deliberately out of vice to make themselves weaker. Like they've got trouble at home, so therefore they're drinking to avoid going home or to forget about the problems. And then for these type of people, it's very tempting for them, I think, to drag those who they perceive not to have the same issues, or they perceive who have already conquered the issues, to try and drag them down or invite them in. And I think maybe this is a large point of in the Australian country, there's a high use of meth currently, and it's because the people are just unbelievably bored. But then, so they're finding like thrills through other things, which is in this case meth. But meth is one of the drugs which you use it once, you feel unbelievably good, and then after that you kind of fuck for life. And I think that when I ask why the hell would people do that when they should know the consequences of it, generally it's like, well, they don't care, but it could also be their friends are pressuring them into it. Because you use it once and then it's very hard to get off it because the damage is so addictive. So then it can be like, a friend is, hey, try this, buddy, to make you feel unbelievable. And the guy's already compromised after, a 6-pack of beer or whatever. In which case that to me isn't anything that is ever done out of compassion. That to me is then one which is done out of trying to make weak as you are. And I think this is the same thing, which is like how fat people are friends with fat people. And you also listen to them when you're at cafes and things like that. And you have like if you go to a cafe, at least in Australia, you always have a group of women bitching and whining about their husbands openly and mocking them. And then you
it's
also
like
have
bringing
yep.
others down to your level so you don't have to feel as bad for being at that level.
No.
Mm.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
other bit is like accepting responsibility is a huge leap, because then it says, well, previously in your past you're a complete fucktard, right? Like all the judgments that you've put on other people, you now need to accept are also true for yourself. But if you can bring everybody down to your level, then it means you don't have to judge yourself. And that's like the cynical, like that's where cynicism becomes pathological or problematic, which is then, well, the other people are only better because they only care about themselves, and that's evil, whatever. So, if they were just more selfless and they cared more about me, then things would be better. And so therefore, try and tear them down, or, whine about your own problems to try and put yourself above them. And you don't have to do any work because, you're living at effect from the world at that weak pose. Whereas if you're strong, then now it means, well, you have a responsibility for the world. And having a responsibility for the world, or a responsibility of your own fucking mess, means that, hey, it was your mess and you only have yourself to blame. And like, most people like really hate that hurdle. And yeah, I'll pass it off to Nata.
Yeah, I have an example of this. Young women, well, not women, young girls, well, yeah, okay, teenagers, teenage girls um, who want to pressure their friends to lose their virginity. That's something that I've seen a lot in Sweden. Like because they lose their virginity and then they feel like maybe like they've done something wrong, so they want all their friends to lose their virginities as well. So that's like a perfect example of this, I think.
So what you're saying is a pedophile should go to Sweden.
But okay. I didn't know that was happening. That's a revelation.
Yeah, it's really like I've seen it like with my friends who tried to pressure me, and my sister's friends, like yeah, and like I have so many friends who had sex before they really wanted to because someone pressured them. Not a man, like not a guy, but their friends, their female friends. So yeah, I think it's exactly this.
Yeah, I do believe that, like, the when you are having drinks, like, amicably, uh, I doubt if you would go that far. Like, uh, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, let's say you are having it just for fun. So Ben was describing two ways of doing it. Then if I come in and you say, "Hey, Sumit, why don't you have few drinks?" I'm like, "No, no, no, man, I'm not having it." Then if you're having it just for fun, then I guess you would be okay. If I sit there, talk to you guys for a few minutes, and then go about my way. I guess that would be okay then. If you're just doing it for fun, or you might poke me once or like twice, in a more funny way. You because you are doing the amicable thing. Uh, but you wouldn't. Uh, there's a line I believe you wouldn't cross if you're just having it for like. Uh, Without that cynicism attached to it, like Ben was saying.
Cool. Does anyone want to run on to another topic? I didn't watch the
Yeah,
lecture, so you guys
yeah,
can't
yeah,
go
yeah.
back to it, depending on me to do it.
Yeah, actually, we were. I came with a plan to cover all the points in 1 hour today. Uh, okay, so I guess I'll start with my lecture notes. So, hey Ben, I just wanted to tell you that now when I make notes, I'm taking out all the exercises from the uh, Peterson's discourse, and I'm putting them in the notes. So these are the things that you can actually do uh, to kind of improve yourself, that are taken out of that lecture.
Sweet. I'm actually just spotting the time, so I think now that I've added my few 30 minutes of sense, I'll make a run for it and go to bed.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So
All
you're
right.
leaving the call?
Yeah. I'll jump off and catch up on it another time. But thanks for letting me join very quickly.
Okay then. Good luck.
Yeah. All right. See you guys. See you, Nata. See you, Sebastian.
All right, it's so I'll cover the major points from the lecture that I really took away. So he talks about how no matter where you live, um, the environment you inhabit is always corrupt or insufficient. Whether you live in America or whether you live in India or Europe. Depending upon where you live, the level of problems and the type of problems would be different, but there would always be those kind of problems. And he talks about two ways of handling it. So even though he doesn't explicitly mention it in the beginning, there are like seems like two different uh, ways of handling this situation. One would be that you kind of start feeling resentful and angry and hatred towards the uh, thing that is handed towards you, because few elements of it are corrupt, and you use that to dismiss the whole thing rather than being grateful for what is given to you and appreciate its positive elements and say, okay, so it does have a few issues and it needs to be updated. And this kind of attitude is very prevalent, the former attitude in today's politics, where we see people pointing out in the past or the history mistakes that people made, and then just dismiss their entire contribution to the uh, country. For example, many liberals point to the founding fathers and say, "Oh, they owned slaves. They were, beep beep beep." Just to use like one point, and then to use that to kind of tear down the whole thing. The same goes with when a private company makes some kind of mistake, and they use that to then jump to this thing that this whole capitalism thing is corrupt. uh, so which is really strange, because I have worked in the private sector, and I know that there are all kinds of people in the organization. There are good people who are trying to do good things. There are people who might be trying to do some shady things, but at the same time you'll find people who are trying to oppose it, and the company is like constantly hiring people, people who probably are the first in their family to go to college and get a job in the private sector and just drastically improve their uh, um, lifestyle. So and I have seen it in India, like so many people have been lifted out of poverty because they got themselves they acquired skills and they got the jobs in the private sector. So so there are always problems, but um, I have seen in at least Western politics that people just use those problems as an excuse to label the whole structure as evil and something that needs to be destroyed, as opposed to understand that the whole thing is so complex, uh, that it has so many different dimensions and colors, for you to just use uh, one pick up one thing and then use that to argue against the whole system, which is just like a absurd thing, and it's very destructive. uh,
Yeah, that's the this reductionism, I guess. Like reducing a complex thing to just one aspect of it, and that's pretty dangerous. Like you could go ahead and say the man is just an animal, and then you reduced him to basic instincts, and can make the argument that like we are evil creatures because like we are just warring animals, like we are animals that kill each other, and or you can just reduce the mankind to their culture and how they are basically nothing more than what they have been shaped to by their environment, which is like the social constructionists viewpoint, I guess. And they all these approaches, these reductionists approaches, all they aim to support their own ideology, I guess. Like they misuse this tool of reduction to put forward their agenda. You know, for as you said, for example, the capitalist critique. Of course, capitalism is so much more complex than just its malevolent and corrupt aspect. But if you just focus onto that, you can make a good and a rather compelling critique of it, and support your own agenda of, I don't know, a communist or socialist state. You know, that it's basically just a tool. It becomes a tool to put forward your own idea.
Yep. And that's what that's what I've realized recently. Like many of these people, they don't care about the things that they seem to care about. Like when they say they care about equality, freedom, uh, not equality, freedom has not been like. Let me put it this way. Many of in the recent uh, scandals related to the sexual harassment. So uh, many of the like top media people, like who are supposed to be liberals, they were doing like horrible things, uh, and when they left, like when they were like fired, in one case, the co-anchors and the people who worked with them uh, went on the air and said something like, we are very uh, rather than say, like that guy was a sob and we are glad he's fired and this world is a better place. Uh, they went into this uh, they started saying uh, things like, we are very saddened by this and we were very shocked, uh, and uh, and I was really surprised by that. uh, uh, I was really surprised by that. And there was this senator who was involved in uh, against sexual harassment, and when his apology came out, it was just like an insult. Like uh, if I was like the women, I would have felt insulted by the very apology, because he said something like, uh, perhaps she misunderstood or something like that what I was trying to do. And my reaction to that was like, if I really cared about women issues like these people say that I do, I would be calling out for his resignation, uh, and that he's like banished from our community. But I did not see that come out from their senior leaders, like the moment that picture was released. So I was really surprised by that. And uh, that to me was an indication that perhaps these people are only in the business of pretending to care about these things, when in reality they are just kind of like political hacks.
I didn't get the last last part you were stuck. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, your connection is bad. Can you repeat that last part?
Yeah. I my point was that they seem to their actions are not consistent with their policies.
Mm-hmm.
Nitha just dropped a message.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like I'm looking at the stream and it only shows my video or my picture. So I think
What are you looking
someone
at?
needs to like the stream, the thing on YouTube, and it only shows my picture. So I think that someone needs to click on my picture
Okay,
in
okay.
this.
I did that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It
yeah.
is fixed now.
Okay, good. Yeah, okay, good.
Okay. I'll move on to the next point. Um, so yeah. So the other way to deal with it is that you say that you are grateful for what you have been handed down, and you try to improve it. And the process of improvement is something like this. You first improve yourself, and then you improve your family. Um, or if you don't have family, you might say, your close friends, and then you try to improve the community around you, and then uh, I don't know how you would jump to that from state, but that's the trajectory. You keep on moving out and having a much wider impact, uh, which is the exact opposite of what liberals try to do. They want to go to the highest level of abstraction, and then that centralized government would make sure everyone down the line complies with that.
Yeah, it's
And
the authoritarian approach. Sorry. Basically, it's this activists strategy. You know, they have not probably like their own life is a mess, but they can stand on the street and wave a sign at the evil government that is doing so bad, and if only they would let this 22-old lesbian dance theory student become president, he would change the whole world for the better, because they know so good, and yeah, they automatically assume that those people in power are like the evil side, and or are incompetent, or they are undeserved. And I think, as Peterson says, of course, a huge part, and maybe a even bigger part than we assume of the government is corrupt, but it's not corrupt enough to not work. Basically, you know, I mean, it works as good as it does in our Western countries, and compared to other places in the world, it seems to be working better, and thus you can deduce that the amount of corruption is probably low enough. You know, like you can just say, wow, it's I don't know, 20% corrupt, and therefore the whole thing should be abolished, and I could do it so much better, because 10 is probably the lowest we have ever gotten in human history.
Uh, okay. The next point was okay. So let's say you say, okay, I want to improve things around me. But then people run into this problem where um, I think the previous point covered it, but I will make it more explicit that we want to do big things, like uh, we want to be like maybe Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, like have that huge visible impact. We already agreed that maybe you want to start first with improving yourself, and if you yourself are not sorted out, like it's unlikely you would have the um, energy and what is needed to implement your great ideas. And uh, first you have to sort yourself out, and you may want to sort out wherever it is that you work, and some people might say uh, still think that they want to do big things, and their current job is very trivial. Peterson's idea is that uh, no matter where you are, there is always a scope of improvement, because things are corrupt, because nothing is perfect, and you may want to assume that wherever you are, that's the best possible place to be for now, as long as you are there, and try to improve things there. And he talks about how when he has really tried to do something, it was like rarely trivial, uh, because whatever it is that he has worked on, it paid off. Uh, uh, so and then he gives the example of I guess he gave the example in the beginning, but that there was a waiter who, after listening to his lectures, was promoted like 2 times in last 3 4 months. So the idea there is that even if you think your job is trivial, you can behave in a ways that will make the lives of your colleagues and your customers uh, uh, not hell, but you can really ruin someone's day uh, by uh, behaving in maybe a rude manner, um, as opposed to you are trying to greet the customers properly, you are nice to your colleagues, you are not trying to you know uh, do things behind their back that are mischievous. And that can make other people's that can really improve other people's lives. For example, if the person who is supposed to clean up the floor does his job properly, when I walk into the bank, for example, I feel good. uh, and then maybe 1,000 people will come to that bank that day and go do their business and go back. And if things are clean, then obviously that um, as opposed to when they are not clean. So you it's not such a trivial thing. Like by improving small things, you do have an impact on the world. uh, it's not like you're saving millions of lives, but you are making things better. And
Yeah, not only that, you, as we discussed yesterday, you also become the person who, even if it's not doing the greatest things in the world, it still does, it still improves its situation, and that's conditioning yourself to to be that that archetype who like renews the culture. But you can't just go from zero to hero and expect to already be the hero that is able to repair the culture. But you have to like take your small steps and start with trivial things, because trivial things are like the things that are not as bad as you fuck them up, you know. It's you have to take small steps at the beginning. And if you're working at a restaurant, you won't, of course, your aim isn't to work there forever, but you should like take with you that experience and fix as much as you can and as many little things as there are, as to become someone who fixes things on a regular basis, so that as soon as you like come into a new territory where there are maybe responsibilities of higher importance than those trivial things you've been doing, you're at least prepared because you already did something and like you are not completely overwhelmed. Instead, you are like on this edge between the known, like the known being you are the person that fixes things, and the unknown in those new responsibilities. Basically, you have to build up your character. That's I think what's most essential to gain from that. Okay, I guess I'm alone now. Nata, are you there?
Yeah, I just came back. Yeah, it is good you brought that up because that was going to be the next thing in the next logical thing to jump at.
Is that the same lecture we did yesterday?
Uh, okay. I'll tell you how this works. It is the same lecture we did yesterday,
Okay.
and when we cover it, you will feel like we are covering the same things we covered yesterday. But this one will go on the YouTube. And
okay.
yeah, so you might feel you are doing it for the first time. You might feel we are talking about exactly the same thing we talked about yesterday. But over here we try to say the same things in a succinct, like small, like how do I say this, short way, in short sentences. Uh, uh, and the discussion we have privately, the ones we had yesterday, in them we can go on a lot of like details and back and forth and be informal about it. Uh, but over here we try to say them in a concise format because with the kind of outlook that other people might gain something from it. Yeah, so there are things we don't say here that we share in the private discussions. Over here we just try to summarize things, but
like the dog story.
Yeah, the dog story, yeah. And but we failed at this job terribly because uh, it's sometimes even this meeting goes for like 5 hours. We come with the goal of finishing it in 1 hour, but it extends to like 5 hours sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, there's so much to Jordan Peterson. Like you can attach his philosophy to so many real life applications. It's unbelievable. Like you can talk about a single point for a whole day, I feel like.
Yeah, he's when we make his lecture notes. So now I have gotten better at it with the multiple monitors and typing as he's speaking. But when I first started, I would have to pause him after every like 30 seconds and then make notes, then unpause him and then make notes again, because there wasn't a minute where I could just relax and listen to him, because
it's so
yeah,
dense. It's so
yeah,
stuffed with all kinds of knowledge bombs. That's why I'm always re-listening them, because you can't remember all that knowledge and all that truth in one go.
yeah. Actually, I have tried because of my laziness, I guess, uh, um, to just listen to his lecture and then just come here and talk about the things he spoke about. So it was just not possible for me to, without the notes, remember what he said. Like I could vaguely recall what he was saying. So I always now make notes. Okay, so I'll move on to the next point. Or do I have something to add on the last one? Yes. Uh, that self transformation thing, you may want to take that one seriously. Um, if you feel things are trivial, then that's okay. But you becoming the kind of creature who fights the dragon and saves the city, that self transformation, uh, that's not trivial. And I feel like if you don't learn the lessons from your current trivial environment that you need to learn, uh, you may have trouble going to the next level. It's like a video game. You have not transformed yourself to the kind of person who you could be, and now then you will go to the next level. And I have seen this in my own life. When I failed to improve myself with the current circumstances I was dealing with, then when I went to the next level, I was like, oh no, I had the chance to learn those three things, and because of my carelessness, I didn't. And if I had, I could have used those three tools here. Uh, so that's so in a way you might be affecting your own future course in a negative way by not like engaging in that process. Okay, so then I have an exercise. In your day job, you try to figure out one thing you can do, something you can actually do every day, or something that you can change about yourself. That will make everyone's life better. Yours, your coworkers, customers, and you can certainly do this in your personal life as well. And then you start doing that thing. So the next point was what will lead to satisfaction in life. So we touched on it earlier, that uh, you have the choice of being somewhere good, or being on an upward trajectory. So being on an upward trajectory, as in that you have defined a set of goals for yourself, and you are trying to chase those goals, and you are making some progress towards them. So that will fulfill you more, rather than you just being uh, in the, like, having a lot of money and then just indulging yourself uh, with that. So that was the idea.
Yeah, I
uh,
guess the essential thing is like just having money or materialistic value doesn't really make you happy. And I think that's not just a phrase or a platitude. That's like actually true, because like there are so many people that are rich as fuck and still hate their lives basically, or they hate it at least to that degree that they just lose it in drugs. They they can't find the fulfillment in their life, maybe even because they are so rich and not dependent on doing anything, that they search something to do and um, try to fill that void with drugs or whatever meaningless activity. But this pursuit is basically pointless, because like they have everything, they have nothing to work for. Like I have a future to work for. I want to finish my study and like found a family and like have kids and stuff. and like I have something to work for. But when you're already there and you have everything, like you're rich and like you have your yacht and girls just fly at you, and like you could do anything. If you could do anything, like what um what what of those things should you do? Like if there's such a broad a possibility of things that you could do because you're freed up to do them, you don't even know what to do and you end up doing drugs. I don't know if that came over correctly. I kind of lost it. You understand what I mean?
It's difficult for me to like uh, relate to that because
Like if you have nothing, if you have everything, you have nothing
mhm.
to work for. Like you have nothing to aim at.
So you have too
everything
much that you could aim at.
everything in what sense? Like you have
Yeah. If you're rich and have like, if you're rich and have girls and have and can like have children or whatever, and um if you are if your materialistic needs are fulfilled basically, and your yeah, I don't know, um there's nothing left to work for basically, and I think you gain don't you gain meaning from striving at something? You know, if there's nothing left for you to strive for, where are you taking your meaning from? And this void that opens itself up at that point, um and you see this in, I mean, you see this in successful people often, like especially those who got successful very quickly, and they just lose themselves in drugs because drugs are the only thing left that can like level, like put them over that level of satisfaction.
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
yeah. So
At least one.
And yeah,
no, I understand somewhat what you mean. Like if you become rich before finding the meaning first, uh, yeah, that can happen. For example, like if tomorrow I became rich, I know exactly what I would do. Uh, uh, with all that money because uh, I found meaning before I became rich.
Okay, now, well,
Uh,
let me tell you. Let me maybe make an example. When, like, imagine if I got rich tomorrow and like really rich enough to not worry about anything anymore. I'm not sure if I would continue my degree. Like, what for? I would like, of course, my degree is not just about making money, but it's also about, like, as I said, I study to become a teacher. It's also about like being a teacher and fulfilling that role in society. But um, if all this money just came at me and freed me from all this this materialistic responsibility, I don't know if I would be strong enough to continue the studies. You know?
hey, you lose motivation.
Mm. Yeah, like
yeah,
the materialistic aspect is a huge part of the motivation.
I don't look
I
at
have
it that
to
way.
complete the degree to get a good job and be able to sustain a family. But if I don't have that part of my motivation, I don't know if it would be enough. Of course, it would be something else with you because as you said, you love your work and you find fulfillment in that work. But it's not the same for everybody.
I will make 2 points. Like, not the first point I cannot make in public, I guess. I'll make the second point. Uh, uh,
The public, like probably one person is gonna watch this.
But still, uh, uh, I think it can be pretty liberating thing. uh, Having that kind of money, like you no longer have to worry about doing things that were required of you because you wanted to meet your basic, like materialistic needs. Now you no longer have to worry about it, so you can finally focus on things that you really wanted to do.
Yeah, but if these things I
Whatever.
really wanted to do are meaningless, that's bad. Like there are a certain percentage of people that would just go ahead and do drugs, and there's a certain percentage of people that would just go ahead and be on the internet their whole life, or like I could see myself getting rich as fuck and never ever leaving my bed again. That could be a possibility for me. I'm sure. So giving me endless supply of money would be like the worst thing you could do, because uh I would be useless for forever.
I guess the way I see it
Yeah,
is, yeah.
yeah. I was just going to say we talked about this a few weeks ago about um, like getting the gold without slaying the dragon. Like the dragon protects you from the gold. So I think this is the same idea.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, the dragon protects you from the gold. That's good. I like that.
I do see that happening uh, when you have acquired all that wealth without building the discipline.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, then you are leading to a total disaster. Hmm. Yeah, I remember that. I have a friend who went and did MBA. Yeah, you're saying something.
No, just continue.
And
I'll
his
remember.
professor told him that most of you would never succeed at building up an entrepreneur, like becoming an entrepreneur or something. And then he was like, why? So the professor says that uh, you don't have the discipline to get up early in the morning and like just work uh, uh, without having pressure of a job, or without being hold accountable, like your manager can hold you accountable. So, and at that point he didn't have a job, and I was telling him that you are totally falling apart at whatever it is that you're doing. Maybe you should see what happens if you get yourself a job. And after he got himself a job, the same person, he now wakes up early in the morning, he gets ready, uh, and he goes to the office, he does the work, he comes back. So uh, but himself, if you leave him alone to his own devices, he would be on YouTube for half the day. uh, so uh, so not having that discipline does then you need some job, or you need something external which holds you accountable. So I can see that. I can see that.
That's the problem you have when raising kids and assume you are um like decently wealthy. Like you shouldn't get them everything they wish for, you know?
Hmm.
Because even if you're wealthy enough to afford it, like if your child wishes for a new phone every month, even if you can afford it, you shouldn't give it to them, because it just conditions them to never be disciplined about their wishes. And I think Jordan Peterson is an excellent example himself for this, because he was once asked, like, about all the Patreon money he's making, and which like exceeds 50,000 a month by now, I think, by far. And he basically said, "Yeah, man, I know this is a lot of money, and um, you know, I'm not 20 anymore. I know about the responsibility that comes with that money, and I'm disciplined enough to use it in the correct way and still work on myself and still work with it and like use it in the most efficient and whatever way, because like he has been through that phase of discipline, whereas you would maybe, if you gave that same amount of money to some, or probably not even maybe, probably if you gave that same amount of money to someone undisciplined, some young person, they would probably never achieve anything close to that which Peterson is able to achieve with it.
He did get some criticism from people because his Patreon like no longer shows how much money he's making.
Yeah, I don't care, man. Like this guy won't waste the money, I can tell you that.
Is $50,000 a month lot of money for people in the West?
$50,000 a month is a hell of a lot, man. That's like 10 times as much as you need to live a proper life.
Ah, okay, cool.
I mean, okay, I don't know about dollars. Canadian dollars are like shit, I've heard, but like 5,000 euros a month are more than enough to sustain a family.
Ah, cool. I hope he's building that university he was planning on building.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah, you too. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, he's gonna revolutionize this the education system in America. I'm telling you, like they are just waiting for it. Those students paying like $200,000 for their education, they just wait for an online university that is basically free in comparison.
Yeah. Even and people like me are waiting for it because that way I don't have to.
Go to the United States.
Yeah. I can do it from here. And he said, I was just finishing this course on algorithms, computer algorithms, because he said they will do a lot of crowdsourcing and stuff, and you can maybe help out. They're planning on building this framework that they will be building such that it will improve itself over time. Like it will learn. So that I think that was really interesting. You can continue. Someone is at the door. Okay, so next point.
Yeah, before we continue,
Mhm.
I really have to make myself dinner, man. I'm starving.
Yeah, so am I.
So I'll leave and maybe come back after dinner, but like I can't think with my stomach that empty. So yeah, see you.
Yeah, even Netha is doing the work, so that leaves me.
Yeah. Do you have a lot more to discuss?
Well, if you
So I
guys are
thought
not,
we could finish.
Well,
Mm.
oh god, if you guys are not here, I'll just cover all the points, and no one will be on the other end to discuss it. So I guess in it will be finished in 20 minutes or something.
Okay, yeah, good.
Yeah,
Then
okay. I'll
see
still
you
be
next
listening.
week, I guess.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Bye.
okay. Bye. I'll still be listening, so maybe I will comment, but I'll be muted
Okay,
for the most
okay,
part. So
okay,
yeah.
okay. Okay, then he covers why does the city falls apart, or why does the state falls apart. So the first point around that is entropy. Like things will fall apart on their own. You don't need to work hard at it, because over time things do fail, and so they can like fail on their own. But as far as the culture is concerned, it could fail if you fail to update it uh, over time. So it could become something that no longer serves the current reality that you are dealing with. So failure to do that can also lead to um, um, a lot of problems. So the other point is deception and corruption. So uh, he talks about how, for example, in Nazi Germany, how it was possible for people to get away with what they got away with, and his point is that every single individual in that society have to be uh, willing to look the other way, and or either be complicit in the corruption that was going on. So uh, and the people who were willing to stand up, they were like quickly dispensed with. Then uh, he talks about how in Russia uh, they would go and round up all the successful people in a particular neighborhood, and then ship them somewhere, and then like they will be killed or something. So and I was really surprised by that, because if you why would you kill successful people? Because I like successful people. If there are successful people in my neighborhood, I'd probably want to learn something from them. So the explanation for that was that there are a lot of people who are like Cain, uh, who are bitter and resentful, and rather than fix themselves, they externalize their insufficiencies, and they become bitter and resentful. So they don't take responsibility for their own lives and improving them. Uh, and by doing that, they are destroying their own ideal, because if you start hating and become resentful of the people who are better than you, then it's difficult then for you to say that you want to be like them, and then this victim type mindset uh, uh, leads to you having moral superiority over the people who are oppressing you, and then that becomes kind of a justification for you to participate in their murder. And This was a really interesting point. Many times we say like, I'm just one person, like what can I do? Well, uh, maybe you'll not be able to have that kind of big impact that Jordan Peterson is able to have, but he talks about how the moral degeneration of one person contributes in no small way to the degeneration of the entire cosmos. So if you are one individual and if you don't uh, try to improve yourself over time and like become better, uh, then society is like built up of these huge number of individuals, and by not moving up, uh, so you can hurt things in two ways. One, you can become morally corrupt, and a lot of people do that. But if you are not constantly improving yourself, you are indeed contributing to the degeneration of the cosmos, because when you do improve yourself, you also inspire other people to improve themselves. And if you are able to eventually produce some creative work that will like inspire others, so if you don't do that, you hurt the society in that way by not revealing your gifts. So that, I think, that was a really interesting idea, that we are all connected, and if your corruption kind of have has a impact on the whole system. Then he talks about how when he was doing this research, he was split into two people. One of them was doer and another one was observer. So he would at times say things like when he's talking to people, and this observer inside him would just go, that's not correct, that's wrong. And that has happened to me even a lot, and I don't listen to it. I still keep doing what I was doing. So the exercise around that is, you try to observe what you are saying, and you try to be as true as you can be. And if you can do that for long enough, you'll become more and more closer to the core of your being. Uh, uh, okay, so then he talks about this is really interesting too, that if you are not really pushing yourself, pushing your boundaries constantly, and using all your resources to chase your goals, so if you are not doing that, you have a lot of energy left to cause a lot of trouble, to troll people, and it can even uh, and so I think that was a great idea, because I have seen that happen in even in my life. I do try to play a lot of tricks on people, and they are funny, but uh, then I started thinking about this, and I realized I could be chasing, I could be working on something productive, and uh, in that time, like, why I'm doing that. And I think it was because I'm not serious about my goals enough to, put all my energy in them. I'm not focused on them enough, and then I use all that mental energy to, engage in mischievous behavior. So that really made a lot of sense to me. Uh, okay, so then he finally gets into the Nova's story, and um, he talks about how what to do when things are really bad. So he uh, uh, he talks about how Noah walks with God, but what does that even mean, that you are walking with God? So he says that the sermon on the then he jumps to sermon on the mount, and he talks about how that is like the one document which lays out for you how you should behave, uh, which is akin to walking with God. So his advice is that you aim for the highest good that you can, and you have to define what that is for yourself, and then strive to achieve it. Then all your daily routine will be built around that. And you have this leap of faith that if I do this, if I follow this, things will work out better for me. Uh, so Then there are two exercises related to introspection. The first one is what is the highest good that you can achieve? So you think about it, what that ultimate thing is that you can do in your life. The next exercise is to prevent the flood from coming. So when you are in a difficult situation, ask yourself, is there anything you did in last 6 months that contributed to this issue? Uh, and if you can figure that out and fix it, you may not be wiped out by the flood eventually. Uh, and he gave an interesting example where, like, if you're having fight with someone, you may want to think about how maybe you are wrong in this situation 2%. So what is that 2%? You try to find that out. Okay, so uh, he to then gets into why people's life is not what they want it to be. And the first, and I believe we have discussed this, that they don't actually figure out what that is, that their life should be. So if you don't have any aim, so it's not, you are not going to stumble upon, you did not have a aim. So even if you do something accidentally, that was not your aim. So you, how does that even work? So if you don't have an aim, you don't try, and you are just lost with indulging in all these other things with all that energy that you have. So the exercise around that is, look at yourself as if you are another person, someone that you care about, and then you ask yourself, what would be a better life for this person look like? And then you start working in that direction. Then he gets into this golden rule, uh, which some people understand it as don't do to others that you don't want others to do to you. Uh, but he has a different interpretation of this, which is, you conceptualize how great things can be for you, then work to make them true for everyone. And he gives the example that how Buddha attained the uh, state where there is no suffering, and he could have stayed there, but he came back from that and he said, I'm going to help other people attain this state.
Yeah, I found that interpretation very interesting. Like
Hmm.
it's different from what I've heard before, so it was very interesting to
Yeah.
hear it that way.
Oh man, this one was also good. Uh, but this does show you um, that your life can really be end up in a tragedy despite not despite uh, let's just say you are doing everything you can to do things right, and you are really trying to be good and achieve things. Um, and so you might say, okay, so I that does that mean I'll make it? Well, by looking at this idea, it seems that your life could end in tragedy, uh, uh, even if you did like all the good and right things. And the reason for that is he talks about how the path to that leads to the right is very narrow, and the path where you will make end up making mistakes, that's like really wide. So even if you have good intentions, you may not find that. So Then he talks about how to find that by using your own uh, emotional infrastructure of your neurological of your nervous system. So uh, uh, he says that you are supposed to watch yourself for 2 weeks as if you have no idea who you are, and then notice when things are perfect for you. You feel like you are in the right place. uh, I interpret it as like when you are in the flow. And then you analyze how you got there, and then you try to stay in that state more and more. Oh, this one was also good. Yes. Then there is a passage in the book about Judgment Day. So this was really heartbreaking. I mean, this is just to conceptualize you on the receiving end of this statement was really heartbreaking. Because uh, even if like you don't believe in God, like I assume you still want him to like you or something. And over here the God says, and then will I profess unto the I don't even know how to say this sentence. Like, so the point is, the God says, "I never knew you. Depart from me, you that work iniquity." So that was really really a harsh sentence. Uh, so he talks about how every day is a judgment day, because when you set out the ideal that you want to achieve for yourself, and if you don't pursue it, then the very fact that you came up with an ideal for yourself to achieve stands in the judgment of your current situation. Uh, and then it makes a lot of sense that people don't come up with that ideal because or abandon it because it is so painful to be judged. It's a constant struggle. Who wants to deal with that? And yeah. And then he makes this point, and this is true for Peterson as well, that when Christ was giving the Sermon on the Mount, he did it with the authority. uh, uh, so like these days, when there is so much fake stuff going on, and so much propaganda going on, so uh, Peterson is the one like who has the authority and the credibility. Like he's uh, I don't see him as a corrupt man. I see him as a like man who tries to do good and be virtuous, and uh, he's he has got like good intentions, and you can trust him in a environment where trusting uh, uh, people has is becoming really and really difficult. Uh, so I really like that thing about him. And yeah. uh, the last point. So there are certain things that you can do, and that if you do them, divine impulse will abandon you. So what are those things? So this idea is somewhat like this: if you are ignorant and if you make mistakes, you can probably be forgiven. But once you figure out uh, uh, the things that you know yourself to be wrong, and you still consciously indulge in them, so that's a like much higher degree of crime. And you might say, why would I do things like that? It's like very similar to you are having a certain kind of, for example, addiction, and uh, one might have some like sympathy for you uh, uh, if you are struggling with it, but uh, as opposed to when you have kind of recovered from it, and then you consciously now can walk away from it, but you choose to indulge in this self destructive behavior again because of your own will. And you might say you wouldn't do that, a human being wouldn't do something like that, but I have seen myself do that kind of thing. So it's not something that like doesn't happen. It's a it's a very uh, difficult thing when the being itself is aiming at its own destruction. So that's uh, so the idea is that's when even the god will abandon you. So and why wouldn't he, like if you want to destroy yourself, then maybe you should get out of your way. Do you have some final thoughts, Nitha?
Um, no, I don't think so. I I really liked the discussion this week, both the one we had yesterday and this one.
Okay.
I found it very helpful. Yeah.
All right. So um, I'll see you next week. All right.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.